Hey everybody, it's Mel back again for another episode of Coach's Corner. Super excited to have another new coach on here, Coach Kendra of TryQ. And she's going to share some information that our other coaches really haven't touched on. And I'm super excited. So Kendra, give your introduction about yourself and talk about a little bit what we're going to go through today.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to be here and talk about a new topic that I think is pertinent to many of us. Like Mel said, my name is Kendra Kitson. I'm a registered dietitian. I also have a master's degree in exercise science, and I am a coach with TryQ Coaching. I'm certified through USA Triathlon, Ironman, and I do have a International Society of Sports Nutrition sports certification. So that's kind of all the nitty gritty of why I'm here today.
It seems like a lot of good things, right? That you have.
So now that it's June and we just had our first day of summer, even though it's a little bit cooler right now in Cleveland, my topic today is fueling for hot weather and transitioning from cooler temperatures to warmer temperatures and what that looks like nutritionally. I'm not going to go into much detail today on how to change your performance around hot weather. This is more or less going to be a nutrition-focused topic for today.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think this will be really, really good topic for our audience to listen to and just kind of reflect on, what they're doing or maybe what they're not doing that they could be doing.
Yeah. I kind of sectioned it out in 4 bigger topics and then addressing those topics into practical recommendations as well. But we'll just jump right in. So the first thing I want to address, of course, when we think about heat, we think about hydration, we think about volume. I think that's the most obvious. So I'm going to start with the most obvious, but I don't think I need to be a dietitian to tell you this, that hydration needs increase as temperature rise. And there's a couple of reasons why this happens. So I'm going to get a little sciencey on you guys. I do feel like sometimes some of our talks are more 101. So this is going to be like a 101 and a half or a 102. So we're gonna dive into it.
I like it. It's cool.
Yeah, a little different. So the body relies on 2 key thermoregulatory responses. So one is redirection of blood flow to the skin. And this increases cardiac demand and can reduce, your blood volume. And the reason why this happens is because you need to then the second, which is to sweat. So sweat then is evaporated and then cools the skin. So that's how your body tries to regulate temperature. It pulls blood to the skin to then make you sweat, and then the sweat is evaporated, and now hopefully you're cooler. So at baseline without exercise, so this is just your day-to-day average Joe, water turnover is about 2 to 3 liters a day. And that's anything from peeing, pooping, and breathing, and because you lose water in your breath. And that's baseline. And then when you add exercise, or if you have a job that requires physical activity, like construction workers, if you're in the military, or athletes and we're working out, we need more. And that increases to about that half to 3 liters per hour that you can potentially lose. So it's really important to, of course, keep up your hydration on a day-to-day basis, but also recognizing that your body needs more when it's hot. So what happens when you don't get enough fluid? I think we've all experienced a little dehydration once in our lives. Not only do we get irritable and we have a headache and we start having some cognitive impairments, but of course we have that rise in core temperature, which is like a big negative for athletes because, the hotter you feel, the increase your rate of perceived exertion and, your performance starts to suffer. There's also something that happens called hypovolemia, which is basically just low circulating volume. So your body doesn't have enough fluid to pump correctly. So to get blood flow where it needs to go, to rise to the, like we said, the skin surface and then to cool you off. We also start having some kidney compensation. We don't want to pee out what we need, like volume, if we're not drinking enough. So that is another consideration to think about when we don't drink enough in the heat. And then this all can lead to that decrease in athletic performance. So some practical guidelines is we need more. What does exactly that mean? We need more fluid. So what happens? And I kind of like to think about this in 3 sections. So like a before, during, and after exercise, because that's our topic for today is, in sport. So these are blanket guidelines. This really depends on your weight and how much you sweat. So just kind of take a little bit of these practical guidelines with a grain of salt, because you could be incredibly different, but I'm trying to lump everyone in this like one big bucket. So typically 12 to 16 ounces every 2 to 3 hours before you exercise is a great rule of thumb, which can be really hard for if anyone's sitting at a desk on their day-to-day, what does that mean? So I like having a big boy, sitting next to me and saying, okay, I need to drink this by the end of the day because I'm going to work out after work, and this is so many ounces. So having something like that either at your side, at your desk, and just have like kind of an eyeball of what you need before exercise can help have you show up fueled to not just the start line, but your day-to-day training activities as well. So during exercise is a little bit more tricky because everyone's a little bit different when it comes to their sweat rate and how much they lose. So a sweat rate test can be really helpful. It's not always, it changes, right? So it's not always the same, at a certain time of year. We test in cooler temperatures. Maybe you lose more in your pain cave than you do outside. Of course, hot and humid weather, where you're racing geographically. So it's a really easy test. You get naked, you weigh yourself before, you exercise, you weigh yourself after, you record anything that you drink, any volume that you drink during that time, and then if you pee, you have to catch it. So that way you can measure it, and then you divide it by the time that you've worked out. I usually do it around an hour because that's what we measure, right? We say this is how much you need per hour. And then you kind of get your sweat rate. I do have a lot of people tell me I'm a heavy sweater, I'm a salty sweater, and sometimes it is impossible to drink your sweat rate. So, yeah, that could be really tough. The belly can really only hold about a liter at a time, which is about 32 ounces. So if your sweat rate is calculated to be more than that, that's where we kind of have to settle with a little bit of dehydration, just because if we do drink more than that, we're more at risk for having weird gastric emptying, sloshy feelings, and just, the overall discomfort. So we do kind of, have to play around with that a little. So the American College of Sport Medicine, or ACSM, recommended for those types of sweaty, salty, or I guess high volume sweaters is to drink to thirst and not really having a goal. And that I feel like you can kind of play around with that. The more experienced you are with your sports nutrition and how in tune with your body, I feel like you can get away. But if you do feel like you've gone so much time without drinking, you forget, and having those volume goals are helpful to you, I do think then you need to either talk to a dietitian or talk to your coach to figure out if a drink to thirst is appropriate or if you do need those like volume goals.
Yeah, I feel like some days I'm better at, whatever I want to drink versus others. But I will say so I have this with me most of the time, like whatever, it's a triclete, but like I have like probably 3, like, I don't know how many ounces this is. I'm guessing it's probably 16.
That one looks 16.
So my goal is like, getting through a couple of these per day, but also I like to have this size because then it makes me get up, because sometimes I don't get up enough when
that's really
I'm sitting at my desk.
Yeah.
So, I mean, granted, like I get up to go to the bathroom, but like this is like for me a constant reminder of like, oh, it's empty. I need to go refill it, right? So like
Absolutely.
there's a couple pieces with that. I got to refill it and I got to get up. So I don't know, I just wanted to put that in there because I'm sure I'm not the only one that it kind of feels that way sometimes. Like, okay, I just need something that's going to push me to like get away from the desk.
That's a really great point. It's a really, great recommendation too. I have just multiple cups around me. Sometimes, like, I'll also motivate myself, like, oh, if I want to drink something yummy, I have to get through this bottle first, and then I get to drink something yummy to try to motivate myself to drink a little bit more. But I do love that. That's such a really good mindset to get you out of the chair, even just walking across the room. So
yeah, exactly. No, but I like yours is like, okay, let's get through this glass of water first. Then we can get to the nice things that taste better.
yeah, I definitely like a Pavlov dog myself to drink a little bit more.
Right.
So the sweat test can be really helpful too to get an idea of how much you lose after exercise, because the recommendations for what to do after you work out is always drink X amount of ounces per every pound that you've lost. And I know we're not crossing the finish line and stepping on a scale to figure out how much we're losing. So I always find that recommendation to be quite impractical. But if I've done a couple sweat tests in the past, I'm like, okay, so for every hour of exercise, I'm losing about a pound-ish, so I've worked out for 5 hours, or 6 hours if you're doing some iron or a marathon. And they're like, okay, so maybe I've lost about, 5-ish pounds in volume because that's what I've done historically. So then you can go from there, is that the goal is to get anywhere from your sweat rate back, but then kind of using that like 16 to 24 ounces of every pound that's lost. So that can look a little bit different for certain people. Of course, if you know your sweat rate, you can just say, okay, I need to replenish this amount per hour, afterwards. It is really important not to just down a bunch of water across after the finish line, but also getting something that has salt and carbohydrate, and then eventually even a little bit of protein. So that's that first piece. We get it. Volume. I'm Kendra. I need to drink more volume. But what about what goes into the volume? What am I going to drink? Can't just be water, right?
Oh yeah, right. Because it can be like you're saying, like it might be the plain stuff, but then you might want to like change it up with the electrolytes so that you have something better tasting too and
100%
replenishing.
Yeah. So electrolytes definitely become more important in the heat, and that's because ding ding ding, our sweat. We're trying to cool ourselves. It's hot. We talked about how the body thermal regulates itself, so it sweats. And a lot of people will ask me, well, what about the other electrolytes, right? What about chloride, potassium, calcium, magnesium, which actually are all listed in the amount of what is lost in our sweat. So in that order. So you can see sodium's number one. So it becomes the most important because it is the most that's lost in our sweat. The other ones, we lose a little bit. Is it significant? Maybe not. That's why a lot of your electrolyte beverages and course nutrition is going to be heavily reliant on replacing your sodium. And what's also really important about why we need to replace sodium is not because it's the most concentrated in our sweat, but it also has the biggest impact on plasma osmolarity, cardiovascular function, and fluid retention. Yes, the other electrolytes do play a role in that, but sodium's the head honcho. That's the meat and potatoes part of your electrolytes. So a couple of blanket recommendations. Of course, you're going to have to play around with this depending on if you see salt on your face. If you cross the finish line and your clothes are white and crusty, you might need the upper end of that threshold. But if you start taking a bunch of, salt pills without ramping up, your belly's going to hurt, right? So everything kind of, increase gradually. So typically salty sweaters need around 800 to 1500 milligrams of sodium per hour. That's quite a big range. That's almost, double. And athletes who cramp often need around that minimum of 600 to upper end of 1200 milligrams of sodium per hour. And this is also kind of the caveat, is that it's better with carbs. We have a transporter called the SGLT, sodium glucose transporter, that needs sodium so that your body can use that glucose. So if you just take glucose, it's not going to be utilized as efficiently as if you have sodium on board.
That's sorry, like that's really good information.
Right? Like we think about, oh, just carbs. You just don't need carbs, you don't need the electrolytes, but there are transporters that utilize sodium for absorption. And if you just do straight up carbs, you're not going to get it.
It's
like an untapped like mine cart. Like that one doesn't get filled because it doesn't have all the nutrients you need for it to move. And then we kind of touched on the other electrolytes, like potassium, calcium, and magnesium. And honestly, if you're eating fruits and vegetables on a day-to-day basis, you'll get enough even with exercise. So I don't necessarily think you need to take those other electrolyte replacements, even if you are exercising, unless, of course, you have some cardiac arrhythmias.
We get it.
We get it. Or if a doctor or a dietitian tells you need a little bit more. So, that's kind of on a case-by-case scenario. So we have our hydration, we have our electrolytes, and I wouldn't be in a sports nutrition talk if I didn't talk about carbohydrates. So, and the reason why this is important is, shocker, carbohydrate demands remain high in the heat. So we're kind of at a double-edged sword when it comes to taking in carbohydrates when it's hot, because you have two things going on with your carbohydrate metabolism, is that you have increased utilization. So that basically is a fancy way of saying there's a higher demand when it's hot out. And then the second kind of caveat to that is that there's reduced oxidation, which means that you have decreased intake. So your body needs more and you're eating less. So you're kind of at this like constant deficit, and it makes it really hard when it's hot. It's a lot. I'm sure anyone who's done cold weather races, it feels so much easier to take gels and waffles than it is when it's blistering outside.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So with that being said, increased temperatures outside and plus decreased intake. So think of this as a math equation. So it's hot outside, you don't feel good, so you're taking in less. This actually means that you have an increased or an accelerated rate of glycogenolysis. Basically, your utilization of glycogen.
Okay.
I thought it was gluconeogenesis, but that's not. It's another fancy word. Basically, the breakdown of stored glycogen. I'm going to just say that.
That sounds great. That sounds great. I don't think anybody in this audience is like,
butchered that one.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're just kind of absorbing information.
I love that. So, and we know, of course, we only have so much stored glycogen for energy. So we really want to try to preserve that as long as we can. And if the demands are high and the intake is low, of course, that means that we're going to pull from those stores a little bit faster. Dehydration makes this worse. Dehydration speeds up that breakdown of glycogen. So if you don't have the volume, you don't have the salt on board, you don't have the carbohydrates on board, so you're kind of getting more shriveled as the day goes on, you're going to start burning through your stores a little bit faster. And from any sports nutrition talk that you might have been to, you only have, there's a finite amount of stored carbohydrate or stored glycogen in the body, which is why we need to replenish it while we exercise. So we mentioned that we need more, we're intaking less. So there's also another negative in the heat, is that anything you ingest, the utilization of that and the absorption of that is impaired when it gets hot. So, It just makes this even more important. So how do we get around this? So what are some practical guidelines? And of course, like there's a wide range of how much carbohydrate you should be taking in per hour. There are pros that can do 120 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Usually 60 to 90 is where I find my age groupers, or even just more competitive age groupers on that like higher end. If you're not used to taking in any nutrition, you want to start low and slow. But remember that more carbohydrate does not mean less glycogen depletion. So we do need to make sure we train our gut to do this. We load our body with carbohydrates. We get used to storing more in the muscles. We can only store so much in the liver, so we utilize other parts of the body to help us out when exercising. Some other things that can be really helpful is that consuming carbohydrates regularly protects the integrity of your gut, which means that less, gastric distress when you're racing. So any low carb diet, like while you're training and exercising, is not going to be good for your belly. So eating carbohydrates while you're working out and while you're training, maybe not while you're working out, but like on your day-to-day, right? Your breakfast, your lunch, your dinners is really going to help improve the integrity of your gut and help recover your gut after exercise. So typically in a liquid, I think this is a little too technical, but I'm going to say it anyway. Usually beverages are about 6 to 8% in concentration of carbohydrate. That's called an isotonic solution, where it plays with like the osms, right? Where water is shifting in the body. Anything less than that is going to be more of that hypotonic solution, closer to water, and anything more than that is called a hypertonic solution, which can cause some gastric distress, which is why there's, certain beverages are mixed a certain way. There's a reason why. Another thing that can really help with practical guidelines, so we're getting in carbohydrates, is we want a couple kinds of carbohydrates in one solution. We want glucose, we want fructose, we want maltodextrin, we want dextrose. We just can't do straight up glucose. Kind of like what we said about that sodium glucose transporter, there's other transporters in the small intestine that can absorb fructose and just get you more carbohydrate in the body. So it's important to have a few different kinds on board.
Quick question. What would be like a straight up glucose that wouldn't have anything else in it? I'm just curious for myself, I guess, for the audience too.
So sometimes gels, when they just use one, so if they just use maltodextrin and fructose, or like some people will just use honey and that's just fructose.
Got it. Okay.
Whereas if you were to do like a lot of the gels, you'll see maltodextrin plus fructose.
Yeah. Okay. Because I've also seen people like use maple syrup, right? But it's like you're saying you need something else to go with those, because you're not saying they're bad, but they just need something else. You
need more than one. You 100% want to use as many as you can, but you do need more than one.
Yeah.
The great thing about maple syrup is that there's both glucose and fructose in maple syrup. A little bit of best of both worlds. Of course, it's not even, and you might need a little. And how much maple syrup can you actually take at one time? So, but to your point, is that you just need more than one carbohydrate source in your nutrition. So, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of stuff on Instagram and social media about them making their own with maple syrup and honey and a little bit of juice and salt and water. And as long as you're having a couple different, sources of carbohydrate, you can do that. But like anything, you need to practice it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Most course nutrition will have both, but there is so much out there. Every time I go on the feed, there's highlighting another product, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And it's really hard to get lost in all of that.
Yeah, I just Googled energy gels. We've got the honey stinger, we got the precision fuel, we got the goo, we got glucose energy gel. I'd never even seen this one before. Bare Performance, Never Second. I was just kind of curious because I haven't really used gel. I use Spring most of the time, but I couldn't remember like the other ones that are like out there. And I was like, there's a ton.
There's a ton out there. And sometimes too, like I made one for an athlete once because the sweet, right, was so tough. So some people will just use dextrose powder, which tastes less sweet on the tongue, but then also kind of reminding them, okay, you have this dextrose on board, but You need like a fructose, or you need like a sucrose, you need something else in there. The reason why fructose is so popular is because and for good reason, I usually try to encourage someone to have a balance of both, is because it's absorbed in the small intestine and not the stomach. So you just get different absorption, which is good when you can't, your stomach can only hold so much. And then last but not least is more that just like heat acclimation, right? So gradual heat acclimation improves your performance, but also your utilization of your ingested substrates, right? So they did say, which I thought was so interesting, because I'm sure your Garmin yells at you or tells you how percent acclimated you are to the heat after working out, but you can get heat acclimated as little as 7 to 14 days before your event. So if it is starting to get a little bit warmer, like ramp that up. Of course, we don't want to go 0 to 100. We want to progressively increase the time and duration that we're in the heat. And then once you're comfortable with the duration of your workout in the heat, that's where you can start increasing your intensity in the heat. But why this is important is that heat acclimation also enhances your sweat capacity, expands your plasma volume, and improves your heat tolerance, all which help reduce the physiological strain from exercising in the heat and improve your efficiency in thermoregulation. So it's just like, it's only going to help you if you get more efficient in the hot weather. And the only way to do that is to exercise in the hot weather.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like we have an added layer of humidity.
Yeah. We do have that wet heat, and I never really, I get like wet and dry heat and how different it is. Yes, but we do have that little bit of extra, help.
I was going to say suffrage, but okay, help is
suffrage is the what you're at, what everyone is thinking.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then last but not least, I always like to add a little bit on recovery, because you just finished a really hard workout. You just finished a really long event, and your body needs to recover, right? It needs to fuel. Not only does it need sleep, a good shower, and a massage, but it also needs to replenish everything that you lost out there. Especially if we're getting used to being kind of chronically dehydrated for a long period of time. If you're a heavy sweater, it's really important to replenish your losses. You're a raisin when you come across that finish line. So first priority, kind of three targets. First thing is volume, right? Your body's a big sack of water, so replenishing your fluids is really important. We talked a little bit about what that means, 16 to 24 ounces per pound lost of exercise. Do the best that you can. If you don't know, then you can just try to use that blanket statement for a few hours after exercise. Include salt, include carbohydrates if you don't want to eat them right away. Next, we want to replenish our glycogen stores. We want to include carbohydrates. There used to be this huge emphasis on, I got to eat a half hour after exercise, because that's like the magic window when the body can reabsorb the best. We've started to find that it's longer. It's up to 3 hours. So yeah. So if you're not hungry coming across that finish line, you can wait a little bit to eat. The whole point is, don't go to bed. Just eat.
Okay.
It does not have to be as soon as you cross that finish line. It can be up to 3 hours afterwards.
But you probably want to rehydrate, though.
But rehydrating first. That shouldn't wait for that.
Okay.
But there's been so many times where I've crossed the finish line, I'm like, I can't even look at the after food tent, like the small pizzas, or I'll give all my after race food to my husband or my mom, because I'm like, I don't want this. But then after all of the race finish line kind of excitement dies down, you finally realize how hungry you are. That can be an hour or two later.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I've thought about that in my head too. Because whether I'm training or racing, I got to eat, but if I'm not hungry and I'm not feeling that urge, then why force it, right?
Yeah, I did Did we do it together? I did a talk on what happens to the body after exercise around like your hunger satiety, and you increase more of those satiety hormones and more of that natural body circulating, GLP that helps like regulate your appetite. But after exercise, you don't want to feel that way, and that's just kind of naturally what happens. That does diminish over time. Like you will get hungry again. The whole like big takeaway is if you finish an Ironman and then you shower and then go to bed, that's going to be a no-no. Like you want to shower, you want to stay up a little bit, of course, continue to drink fluids and maybe have something small before bed. Or like if you are exercising after dinner and you exercise after dinner, it's a hard workout, it's a hard effort. You just don't want to brush your teeth and go to bed. Like you need to have a little something. So that's where I say like you get a little bit of flexibility, but there's no option to like just avoid eating.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, we do need to replenish some protein. So we probably have torn some muscle or have some muscle breakdown while we're exercising and broken that apart. And we need to refuel that, right? If we don't eat protein, we're not going to rebuild our muscle or have muscle protein synthesis. So typically another like really great target is 20 to 30 grams after exercise, which is why that whole like chocolate milk was being pushed, because it's that perfect ratio of carbohydrates to protein. It's a fluid. So you get kind of all three of those, like kind of best of both worlds. Of course, if you're lactose intolerant or if milk after the end of a race doesn't sound super appetizing to you, you can always do like a PB&J and some Gatorade or an electrolyte beverage, or it doesn't have to be that like classic, chocolate milk example, but having a little bit of carb and protein is going to help kind of hit those two goals and then the fluid goal at the beginning.
I love that we just went through those three things because some people may think about it, or some people are trying to figure out like, okay, now that I'm done, what am I really supposed to do? And you broke it down, those three things, pretty well. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So I think big picture is when it starts getting hot out, yes, we know we're supposed to drink our fluids. Don't forget about your electrolytes, which I think it's pretty hard to do nowadays when, there's a lot of companies pushing their electrolyte beverages. Don't forget about your carbohydrates. It's really important. It's more important to take in your proper nutrition when it's hot. And then recovery. We can't forget about recovering after exercise and, after being depleted and working out in the heat. And if you do have the opportunity just to do like a really easy, like quick and dirty sweat test at home, that can really be helpful to estimate how much you personally need. You can use these general, guidelines. I've known people I've had someone tell me they don't sweat, and that like blew my mind because I just sweat at baseline all the time. So their sweat needs were a lot lower and their volume needs were a lot lower than someone like myself who is just a sweaty girl. So pushing all this fluid, if you don't need it, might hurt your belly, but then also not getting enough is, a caveat as well.
Yeah. Actually, I think my mom doesn't really sweat. She's like, it's weird. Like, I think she has like a little glisten, and then versus me, I'm like,
I went to the doctor because I thought it was a problem. Like I would sweat through like hoodies, especially when I'm anxious.
Yeah.
Or like if I'm driving in traffic, I'll go like, oh. And then what did someone tell me? Of course, like the more you exercise and the more athletic you are, just the more you sweat at baseline anyway. I'm like, solid.
Yeah, great. So since this is like the first time we've had you on here, and you're such an expert in like nutrition, if somebody wanted to reach out for some nutrition questions, or if they didn't necessarily want like the triathlon coaching or run coaching, do you offer nutrition coaching as like a separate package?
Yeah. So I'm pretty flexible with nutrition coaching because I feel like people's needs are a little different. Yeah. Usually, like I'll do I can meet with a one-on-one session if you just want like, hey, can you look at my stuff to make sure it's good? solid. If you have more other goals like body composition goals, or your belly is like really not liking the nutrition, you want to talk through some stuff, I'm more than happy to help work through that as well. And you can find that information on the TryIQ website. You can also message us or DM us on Instagram or Facebook, and I'm more than happy to help connect you with that as well, and talk a little bit more about what, your needs are and how I can help you.
Yeah. And I think like, especially for somebody like you who has, you do and have done the training, right? You race. So you understand the lifestyle, but you also understand the other elements, of the nutrition piece, whether it's like training, racing, or everyday nutrition, and you're local. So I think this is like awesome, like little package, that maybe people don't understand, that like you're available, right? Like
I'm available. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know how hard it is to meet in person. I do a lot of virtual calls and just, talk that through. And so, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I've worked really hard to know about nutrition, and continuing to learn about nutrition. And I'm ready for any questions anyone has about whether it's heat acclimation or just in general nutrition knowledge. I'm more than happy to help.
Yay. Is there anything else that you want to share before we end this recording?
I think that's what I got. Those were the 4 big topics. As anyone starts transitioning into this hot weather, just reemphasizing volume, electrolytes, carbohydrates, heat acclimation, and recovery. That's kind of like the big, 5 topics we covered today.
Yeah.
And kind of, I don't want to say in that order because they're all like important, but I think that's like the big takeaways I want from the people listening to today's session.
Yay. Well, like I said, I appreciate you coming on here. I think now is a great time to talk about this as we're transitioning, hopefully, to like warmer weather. Although I did see that the Great Lakes may have like a quote unquote cooler summer. That's actually not necessarily bad either, right? Even though we do want the warmth, but for training, if we're trying to work with, that heat element and higher humidity, if that's not as high as we're used to, then it could be a good year for training and racing. Who knows?
That's a good point. I always joke that I'm born and raised in Cleveland, so like I'm used to this like never like unpredictable weather we have, but we get like 6 weeks of like hot weather, so like I never complain if it's hot. I'm like, bring it on. Like, we don't get very much of this.
I'm one of the people, like sometimes Chris, like I feel really bad, but like I will fight to not have the AC on because I want to hear everything that's happening outside, and I want to feel those breezes come through because we're so like cooped up in the winter. So yes.
Yeah, preach.
Well, thank you so much, Kendra. I can't wait for everyone to get a chance to listen to this. And you've dropped a lot of great information, and I will share your contact information in the YouTube description so that people can reach out to you if they have any questions. And
awesome.
We can't wait to have another session with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mel. I really appreciate it. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.